All right, hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about chaining as a strategy for working with deaf and hard of hearing students. This is a strategy that I found really helpful in my classroom when I had a self-contained classroom, and also when I've been on the road as an itinerant teacher working with students that are primarily in the mainstream setting. So regardless of language modality or use or placement, this is a really invaluable tool that I thought we should talk about today. So today our objectives will be defining the chaining strategy and the use of it within instruction for learners who are deaf and hard of hearing. 2. Describe the hierarchy of skills from detection to comprehension for language. Number 3. Distinguish the difference between consistent and inconsistent chaining. When you look at this slide right here, you'll see that we have spoken language and sign language. You may have a student using both, or they may just be using sign language, or they may be using spoken language. Regardless, this is a tool that you can use across the board with deaf and hard of hearing students regardless of age or communication approach, which makes it really beneficial. I'm going to start with the spoken language and then I'll move on to sign language, but I'm going to go from left to right on the graphic for those of you that are looking at the screen. So the first level of representation is spoken English, what the child hears, how they're using spoken English. And then the second representation within English would be the written format of it. So you're going from spoken English to written English, and you'll see that there's a phoneme to grapheme correspondence there, and you can go either way. The child heard the word said, such as apple, or they read the word apple. And then the third and final representation, which can be fingerspell and use of manual alphabet. I've used this with signers and non-signers for a tactile way of kind of cementing it into their brain or their hand for some of my tactile learners or visual learners. But you can also use other representations for that third representation. So if you have a family that does not use sign language or even the manual alphabet, there's another way to hit that third level, and we'll talk about that more later. For sign language, you have the ASL signs, the parameters, and there's the 5 parameters in American Sign Language. You also have sign language systems. So you've got the parameter to word correspondence, and then you've got it connected back to written English, and then to the fingerspell in the manual alphabet. And this is a figure based on Wilcox 1992. If you click on the picture, it will take you directly to the article where I was able to locate that. The hierarchy of skills, when you look at the pyramid on the screen, you'll see at the bottom is detection, which is the first part of language, detecting that language is happening and has meaning. Second is, in the red box of the pyramid, is discrimination, being able to detect and discriminate the difference between cat versus bat, or nice versus clean in American Sign Language. Identification, identifying where it starts and ends. Oh, this is what this is, but ultimately you get to the top where you see the purple. Comprehension, I can now know that this is nice, this is clean, or cat versus rat versus bat. And then at the higher level of comprehension, now I know bat has 2 different uses, such as the animal or the baseball bat. And that's where we want to kind of take our students through the whole pyramid as they go through language. Structured language sessions, regardless of which language you're focusing on, or both. It's not pick one. You can have sign language and spoken English. You want to keep the sessions brief. They should not exceed 60 minutes, and even within that I'll be hitting different targets within that lesson so that way they're not bored or getting super frustrated. And you should have a clear goal. Frequency, it should be at least once a week, if not twice, but even better would be daily. If you think about how often you have English class or how often you took Spanish in high school, it really does take a lot of specialized direct instruction to build a language receptively and expressively. And ultimately, you need to be tracking progress. Chaining to build language, this is a universal strategy. I'm talking about it to build language, but you will hear other therapists or other professionals talking about chaining to build a skill such as tying your shoelace. If you have experience working with an occupational therapist, they may be doing backward chaining on how to tie a shoelace or other aspects of daily living. For this, we're focusing on language building. Okay, so first thing, when we do a chain, we want to be consistent in that session or that class or that topic. You don't want to be inconsistent because it's going to confuse the learner. If they know that I'm going to typically show the word in English and then I'm going to sign it and then I'm going to fingerspell it, as long as my chain is consistent, then the child has less like, wait, what's going on here? I don't know what's going to start and how we're going to end. But if they know what that chain looks like and they get used to it, you're going to be far better off. Consistent chain format is the top part of the graphic. You'll see the chain going from left to right with no broken links. And that's knowing how you've built the chain for your student, such as they hear the word, they see it in the printed format, they see the word again, or hear the word, depending on your chain. The second part would be an inconsistent chain format, which confuses the learner. You'll see a graphic of the chain that's broken, and that may be if I'm consistently forgetting to fingerspell, because that's an important part of American Sign Language and literacy skills. So you want to make sure that you're saying the word, and that can be spoken, signed. And you also want to make sure that you're not constantly doing both languages at the same time. I would put a caution on that. English and American Sign Language can't be done at the same time. Both languages become compromised. That being said, I am still mindful about not always putting one language first, so that way I'm not having an unintended bias against a language. So in my classroom, for certain lessons, I've done where I was going to do ASL first, English second. Another day I may do English first and ASL second because I had a variety of deaf and hard of hearing kids. But you want to figure out what chain is best for your student, and it can change based on content or time of day, familiarity with topic. So be mindful as you engage in using that strategy, that there's a lot to think about, but it does have a lot of benefit and rewards for your student. How many links does your chain have? As I said, this is student specific. So you may say the word, they will hear it, they will see it in printed form or the picture or the actual item. You may include fingerspelling because that's a form of literacy as well. You may do the ASL sign. You may do the English print. You could even do visual phonics hand cues to show the different phonemes, or if that child knows cue to speech. How you build your chain, once again, is student specific, and when I talk about listening, you can do that in both languages. So don't think you just have to do it only in English, as many people have thought that in the past. Alright, so forward chaining, you can go forward or backwards, whichever way you want to go up and down the chain. So in the graphic on the left, you'll see ASL signs, the English print, then the fingerspelling. You could even start with fingerspelling and go into the English print or the ASL sign, or the child encounters the word in their classroom book or even on the TV screen if used in captions and subtitles. So when they see that word and they're like, hey, what does that mean? You could fingerspell it again and then sign it. And now they know what that word means that they may have caught in a cartoon. And on the right side of the graphic, you'll see ASL signs, fingerspelling forms, and English print. You're constantly going back and forth. Don't assume just because you signed something that the child knows what that means. I could sign pineapple or say pineapple, but until you go back and connect it to, hey, this is a picture of pineapple, this is what I'm talking about. You also want to be mindful on showing different pictures of the pineapple, because if you only show how it looks as the fruit, but not what it looks like on the lunch tray, they may not make that connection. And then finally make the connection to the printed form. As I mentioned, you can go forward or backwards. It doesn't matter where you start in the chain, just that you're consistent in what you're putting in your chain. Alright, so on the right you'll see a graphic where at the top it says start and there's an arrow down to a box that says write a word on the blackboard. And that would be in English in the classroom most often. Then another drop down arrow that says fingerspell the word if that's part of the chain for your particular student. It may not be. Moving over to the right, there's another arrow, and then it goes to create a sign for the word. I will caution you again, don't just create your own signs. Make sure you're using signs that have been established in the deaf community. Looking down, there's another box that says point to the word. You want to continually go back to the printed form of the word. And then show a picture of the word when that's possible, and it could even be a video clip. And then ultimately you end at the bottom of the graphic where it says finish. So you can start at the top or you can start at the bottom and work your way back. That's the nice thing about being able to chain regardless of which direction you're going, but know what chain your student needs. Chaining, linking English and ASL. This is a strategy that can help students learn and retain new vocabulary terms, as I mentioned. about the pineapple. I could sign pineapple. I may be a student that's using an interpreter in the classroom whose family is not a native signer. American Sign Language is not native to that household. So when they're in that classroom, this is the first time they're seeing the sign for pineapple, or the interpreter uses a different regional sign for pineapple because it's an unusual word to sign. Then you're now connecting it back to the printed form. So you're coming full circle with all the languages and literacy skills. This also can be used to access higher abstract concepts within the story, such as a phrase, and it builds a bridge between English and ASL, or even spoken English auditory skills to the printed form. At the end of the day, we want our students to be fluent in language and have access to literacy-based skills, being able to read and write the word in English regardless of what their receptive and expressive language or languages are. Like I said, you want to link to the picture or the event. So when possible, circle back to the term and link it to the picture or the moment being referenced. Discuss how the word's being used, and make sure that you do multiple points of exposure, such as the word run. It can mean to run across the room, to sprint, to compete for office during an election, or to run errands, or motor running, which does not include actual physical running, but you want to make sure that the child knows all the different uses for run when you're doing that chaining and that linking of language. So to summarize, be consistent with your chain and whatever you put into your chain. I've covered a lot in a short amount of time, guys. So does your chain include fingerspelling, the sign, the voice, the picture, the toy, the actual object, or even video clip? Ensure that both you and the student are doing the chain, so that way they're starting to internalize that strategy in bridging both English, ASL, or to the printed form from what they heard or saw. And you want to definitely track student progress to determine which chain works best for the child during specialized language instructional session. And it can better help you and your student learn. Are they a visual learner, an auditory learner, a tactile learner? And you definitely want to refer to our resource slide for additional information on this strategy. This was a quick 10-minute dump on chaining, so that way you kind of got the quick of the strategy, but we have way more resources that you might want to go look at.